Hey there folks, my name is Empty Berry, and welcome to today's episode of Lore to Go, the series where we talk about the story behind games in 5 minutes or less. This episode will be the second in a two-part series about the Hive, one of the main enemy races in Destiny. If you didn't catch the first episode about the Hive, I'll put a link to it down in the description. This episode will be focusing on the philosophy of the Hive known as the Sword Logic, the rise of the Taken King, and the Hive Gods going their separate paths. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel in order to see more videos about characters and events in the Destiny universe. With all that said, let's jump into it. At the end of our last episode, the three Hive leaders, Xivu Arath, Savathun, and Auryx, had released the worm gods from the planet Fundament, caused the Traveler to flee the system after destroying the Ammonite race, and had set off into space to continue to feed their worms' appetites. When the three sisters gained power from the worms, they also learned about the Sword Logic and how to use it to gain more power. The Sword Logic is both a philosophy and a framework by which one may gain access to paracausal powers, similar to what Guardians use with the Light. The Sword Logic states that existence is the struggle to exist, that anything that cannot protect itself against death should rightfully be destroyed by a more powerful entity. It is similar to the concept of survival of the fittest, as well as aligning well with the philosophy of the darkness. As one overcomes and kills other beings, they prove logically that they are stronger than them, and they gain power through this method. By gaining enough power, the wielder can become no longer bound by physical laws, and thus achieve paracausality. The ultimate power gained via the Sword Logic is the ability for one to enter the Ascendant Plane and construct a throne world, which allows the user to transcend death and essentially become immortal. With the power of the Sword Logic and the worms, the Hive traveled through the universe in a campaign of death and destruction. It was during one of their wars that Auryx came to a disturbing realization. The appetites of their worms were growing past the ability for the Hive to feed them through violence. Meeting with his sisters, he decided that he needed answers from a higher power to determine what to do. To gain enough power for an audience with one of the worm gods, Auryx killed Xivu Arath and Savathun, though they would later return to life via their throne worlds. Imbued with power thanks to the Sword Logic from killing his siblings, Auryx confronted one of the worm gods named Akka. He was then able to strike down Akka, take its power, and call upon the darkness itself. Though the conversation with the darkness is not known, it is known that when he returned, he had transformed once more. Going by the title of Oryx the Taken King, the Hive God now wielded the ability to take. This ability allowed him to take control of a being, imbue them with paracausal abilities, and then force them to obey and serve him completely. Along with Oryx's newfound abilities, he also had found a way to solve the problem of the growing appetite of the worms. He created a tithing system in which each hive would take some of the power from killing an enemy, then give the rest to their commanding officers. This would be repeated throughout all of the Hive until it eventually bubbled up to the three Hive Gods themselves. This process proved to be successful, as it satisfied the worms' hunger for violence while still allowing Auryx, Savathun, and Xivu Arath to invoke their inner natures. After thousands of years of combat and genocide, Savathun began to question their actions, going so far as to ask if what they were doing was right. Auryx replied by quoting the Sword Logic, that the mere fact that they were alive and those they opposed them were not proved that what they were doing was right. While Savathun accepted this, she was still unsatisfied with the need to feed their worms constantly and searched for other means to satisfy them. In order to ensure that Auryx did not learn of this and potentially strike her down, she decided to leave her siblings. Savathun took her fleet and her followers and traveled into a black hole, hoping to further her plans and find a way to escape the trap of the worms. Around this time, Xivu Arath also decided to set out on her own, stating that Auryx had grown too powerful and was constraining too many of her choices. She too departed with her followers, looking to test their strength against other species without the assistance of the rest of the Hive. At this point, Auryx found himself alone for the first time since leaving Fundament. He spent a while in thought, musing over his nature and what to do next. In the end, he decided to continue his campaign to prove that he was the final shape. With his followers and their warships, Auryx set out into the rest of the universe, determined to prove his superiority over all that came before him. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Lore to Go. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a comment below and consider liking the video. The story of the Hive is far from over, and I'll be doing videos on each of the Hive Gods in the future, so make sure you subscribe in order to learn about what they've been up to since embarking on their own. That's all for today though. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you next time.